Imagine a patient walks into a psychiatrist's office. This patient is wealthy. Filthy rich, actually. They generate about $27 trillion a year. They own the biggest guns, the fastest cars, and they basically run the neighborhood. But this patient is also a nervous wreck. They haven't slept in 3 days, they're $34 trillion in debt, they're popping Xanax like Pez, and they have a distinct paranoia that everyone is trying to steal their lunch money. You don't have to imagine too hard. You are that patient. Or at least you're a neuron firing in its brain. Welcome to the psychology of the United States of America. We aren't just looking at history dates or GDP charts today. We're going to put America on the couch. We're going to dissect the national psyche to figure out why a country obsessed with freedom is so anxious, and why they buy things they don't need with money they don't have. Buckle up. It's going to be a bumpy therapy session. Today, we're doing a deep dive, and I mean deep, into the machinery of the American mind. We've broken this down into 8 distinct psychological pillars that drive everything from our economy to our foreign policy. If you want to understand why your rent is high, why your boss won't leave you alone on weekends, or why the stock market acts like a bipolar teenager, you need to understand the psychology behind the policy. Let's get right into the first diagnosis. 1. The cult of the grind. The Protestant work ethic on steroids. You know the feeling. It's Sunday night, roughly 7:30 p.m. You're watching Netflix trying to relax, but there is a low-level hum of anxiety vibrating in your chest. You aren't doing anything wrong, but you feel guilty. You feel like you should be doing something. Answering that one email, prepping for the meeting, optimizing your side hustle. This is the quintessential American neurosis, the inability to exist without producing. While the French are sipping wine during a 2-hour lunch break and the Spanish are taking a siesta, the American worker is eating a sad, lukewarm salad at their desk while typing with one hand. But why? Is it just because we love money? Not exactly. It's deeper. It's theological. To understand why you feel guilty for resting, we have to go back to the OGs of anxiety, the Puritans. When Max Weber wrote The Protestant Ethic and the Spirit of Capitalism in 1905, he identified something unique about the American software update. See, in many older cultures, work was a burden. You worked enough to eat and survive, and then you stopped. Leisure was the goal. The Puritans flipped the script. They believed in predestination, the idea that God had already decided who was going to heaven and who was going to hell, and there was nothing you could do to change the list. However, they believed that worldly success and hard work were signs that you were one of the chosen ones. So if you were lazy, you weren't just broke. You were probably going to hell. If you were rich and busy, God liked you. Fast forward 400 years. We've largely ditched the bonnets and buckles, but the psychology remains hardwired. We have replaced salvation with success, but the mechanism is identical. In the US, your value as a human being is inextricably linked to your economic output. This leads us to a fascinating and disturbing economic reality, the vacation gap. Let's look at the data. The European Union mandates, by law, at least 20 paid vacation days per year. In France, it's 30. In the UK, 28. Do you know what the federal requirement is in the United States? 0. There is no federal law requiring your employer to give you a single minute of paid time off. And yet, even when Americans do get vacation time, they don't use it. A study by the US Travel Association found that Americans leave 768 million days of vacation unused annually. Why? Because of the at-will psychology. In most of the US, employment is at will. This means you can be fired for any reason or no reason at all without warning, as long as it's not discriminatory. In Europe, firing someone is a bureaucratic nightmare. In America, it's a Tuesday morning conversation. This creates a psychological state of hypervigilance. You're always auditioning for your own job. Now, let's steelman this argument. Why is this good? Well, this relentless drive is exactly why the US economy is the beast that it is. The US GDP is roughly $27 trillion. The Eurozone, which has a similar population size, is around $15 trillion. The American obsession with the hustle drives innovation at a pace other countries struggle to match. It's why you have Apple, Google, Tesla, and Nvidia. High risk, high reward, high stress. We trade stability for velocity. But the grind set has morphed into something darker in the 21st century. Workism. The Atlantic's Derek Thompson coined this term. It's the idea that work is not just how we buy groceries, It is our identity, our community, and our purpose. As religion has declined in American life, the office has become the church. The CEO is the bishop. The quarterly earnings report is the scripture. Here is where the smart, edgy commentary comes in. We have convinced ourselves that sleep deprivation is a status symbol. You hear it in corporate speak all the time. Oh man, I'm so swamped. I was up until 3 a.m. on the Tokyo call. Translation: look how important I am. My exploitation is proof of my value. It's a form of Stockholm Syndrome where the hostage falls in love with the cubicle. And the mechanics of this are brutal. Since 1973, productivity in the US has increased by 64.6%, while hourly pay has only increased by 17.3%, adjusted for inflation. We are working harder, producing more efficiently and generating massive value, but the average worker isn't capturing that surplus. So why do we keep doing it? Because of the optimism bias, which we will get to later. Every American believes that they are just one grind away from making it big. We don't see ourselves as exploited workers, we see ourselves as temporarily embarrassed millionaires. The takeaway, the first pillar, American psychology is that we are a nation of anxious producers. We have monetized our existence. If you aren't growing, you're dying. It's a great way to build an empire, but a terrible way to build a calm life. 2. The consumer identity. I shop, therefore I am. If the first pillar of American psychology is how we make money, the second is how we spend it. You are walking through a Target. You came in for laundry detergent, just detergent. You're walking out 45 minutes later with a scented candle, a new throw pillow, a pack of Oreos, and a decorative wooden sign that says gather, even though you hate having people over. What just happened? You didn't just buy objects, you bought a feeling. In America, consumption isn't just about utility, it's about self-actualization. We have internalized the idea that we can solve internal problems with external purchases. Sad? Buy a treat. Insecure? Buy a gym membership. Feeling uncool? Buy the new iPhone. This is what economists call the hedonic treadmill. Imagine a hamster wheel. You run, buy something, you feel a hit of dopamine, happiness, and then you adapt. The happiness fades. You're back where you started, but now your bank account is lower, so you run again. Let's look at the mechanics of consumer credit. This is the fuel for the fire. The United States is unique in how it handles debt. In many cultures, debt is shameful. In German, the word for debt, Schulden, comes from the word for guilt, Schuld. In America, debt is a tool. It is leverage. Total US household debt hit a record $17.5 trillion in early 2024. Credit card debt specifically smashed through the $1.13 trillion mark. Why are we so comfortable with this? Because our entire financial system is built to detach the pain of paying from the pleasure of buying. Casinos use chips instead of cash, because chips don't feel like real money. Credit cards work the same way. Now we have Apple Pay. You don't even have to swipe. You just wave your phone at a machine, it goes beep, and you get your latte. It feels like magic. It's actually financial anesthesia. Here is the steel man. Consumer spending drives the US economy. It accounts for roughly 68 to 70% of US GDP. If we all suddenly became frugal minimalists who only bought what we needed, the global economy would collapse overnight. Recession, unemployment, chaos. Your impulse buy at 2 a.m. on Amazon is literally keeping the global supply chain moving. You're a hero. But the dark side is the keeping up with the Joneses phenomenon, which has now been upgraded to keeping up with the Kardashians and random influencers. In the 1950s, you only had to be jealous of your neighbours. If Bob next door got a Cadillac, you felt bad. Today, thanks to Instagram and TikTok, you are comparing your life to the highlight reels of billionaires, models, and trust fund kids in Dubai. The psychological result is a permanent state of relative deprivation. You might have a roof over your head, air conditioning, and a supercomputer in your pocket, things a medieval king would kill for, but because you don't have a private jet or a passive income stream of $50,000 a month, you feel like a failure. The takeaway? We have merged our identity with our purchasing power. We buy things to signal who we want to be, rather than using things to support who we are. 3. The optimism bias, the temporary millionaire delusion. Let's play a game. I'm going to give you a statistic. The chance of a new small business failing within 10 years is roughly 65%. The chance of becoming a billionaire is practically zero. The chance of becoming a reality TV star is even lower. And yet, ask the average American high schooler what they're going to be, and they won't say a mid-level logistics manager. They'll say influencer, CEO, or NBA star. This is the optimism bias, and nowhere is it stronger than in the USA. John Steinbeck supposedly said, though the quote is disputed, the sentiment is accurate. Socialism never took root in America because the poor see themselves not as an exploited proletariat, but as temporarily embarrassed millionaires. This explains so much of our policy. Why do working-class Americans often vote against taxes on the ultra-rich? A rational economic actor would say, tax the rich guy, give me the services. But the American psychological actor says, hey, don't tax that rich guy, because one day I might be that rich guy, and I don't want to pay taxes when I get there. It's a collective hallucination, but it's a useful hallucination. This delusion is the engine of risk-taking. If you looked at the odds of starting a company, the stress, the bankruptcy risk, the lawsuit risk, you would never do it. You have to be slightly delusional to be an entrepreneur. You have to believe you're the exception to the rule. This is why the US dominates in venture capital. In 2023, US startups raised roughly $170 billion. The next closest country wasn't even close. In Japan or Germany, failure is often a permanent stain on your resume. In Silicon Valley, a failed startup is a badge of honor. It's called experience. Oh, you blew $5 million of investor money on a Wi-Fi connected juicer that didn't work? Cool. What's your next pitch? This culture of fail fast allows the US to iterate technology at blinding speeds. We are willing to crash the car 10 times if it means the 11th car flies. But there is a dark side to this optimism, the lack of a safety net. Because we are so optimistic, we assume we won't need help. We don't like paying for universal healthcare or strong social services because that feels like planning for failure. You are walking a tightrope without a net because you are convinced you won't fall. When you do fall, medical bankruptcy, layoffs, disability, the shock is devastating. Medical debt is the leading cause of bankruptcy in the United States. That is a uniquely American sentence. We have built a system designed for winners, assuming everyone will eventually win, but math says that's impossible. The takeaway: American optimism is a double-edged sword. It gives us Elon Musk and Steve Jobs, but it also gives us a population that votes against its own safety interests because they are betting on a jackpot that most will never hit. 4. The moat mentality, the geopolitics of invincibility. Let's zoom out, literally. If you want to understand the American mind, you have to look at the American map. Most countries live in a bad neighborhood. Poland has spent the last 1,000 years getting invaded by Germany or Russia. China has 14 land borders, several of which are with nuclear powers who don't like them very much. The Middle East is, well, you know. Now look at the United States. To the east, fish. To the west, more fish. To the north, friendly Canadians who apologize when you step on their foot. To the south, Mexico, a major trade partner separated by deserts. This geography has created a profound psychological baseline: safety. The US has the world's largest navigable river system, the Mississippi Basin, more arable land than almost anyone, and 2 massive oceanic moats protecting it from invasion. This creates the Fortress America psychology. Because we are physically safe, we view war differently than the rest of the world. For Europe and Asia, war is something that happens in your living room. It's rubble, starvation, and occupation. For Americans, war is something that happens over there. It is an away game. This disconnect allows for a peculiar kind of detachment. We can wage war for 20 years, like in Afghanistan, without the average citizen ever seeing a tank on their street or hearing an air raid siren. This feeds into the world police complex. Because we are safe and rich, we feel a moral and economic imperative to manage the global order. But we often do it with the nuance of a sledgehammer, because we don't suffer the direct blowback. Let's look at the steel man. This moat mentality is exactly why the US became the guarantor of global trade. After World War II, the US said, "Okay, we have the only navy that matters. We will protect all shipping lanes. You can trade safely, but you have to play by our rules and use our dollars." This is Bretton Woods. It created the most peaceful and prosperous era in human history, relatively speaking. The US Navy is the reason you can buy a cheap toaster from China and have it arrive in 3 days without pirates stealing it. You're welcome. But here is the dark side. When that sense of invulnerability is pierced, the psychological reaction is extreme. Think about Pearl Harbor. Think about 9/11. These events weren't just attacks. They were psychological violations of the safe house. When the moat is breached, America goes from relaxed giant to blind rage in about 4 seconds. Because we aren't used to vulnerability, we overcompensate. We built the Department of Homeland Security, the TSA, and the Patriot Act almost overnight. We spent trillions on wars to re-establish the feeling of safety. The American psyche oscillates between isolationism, let's just stay behind our moat and grill burgers, and interventionism, we need to go fix that country right now. There is no middle ground. The takeaway: our geography has spoiled us. We view security as a birthright, not a constant struggle. This makes us incredibly powerful, but it also makes us prone to massive overreactions when the real world dares to touch us. 5. The cult of the individual. Don't tread on me, even if I'm wrong. If you want to start a fight in an American bar, tell someone what they can't do. The core atom of American society is not the family, the village, or the state. It is the individual. This goes back to the frontier thesis. For a huge chunk of American history, if you didn't like your neighbours, you could literally pack your wagon, move west, and stake a claim on land where the nearest sheriff was 3 days away. You had to be self-reliant. If your barn burned down, you rebuilt it. If a bear attacked, you shot it. There was no 911. There was just you and a Winchester rifle. This history has hardwired a specific definition of freedom into our brains. Political philosopher Isaiah Berlin called this negative liberty. Negative liberty is freedom from the government, freedom from rules, freedom from interference. Leave me alone. Most other developed democracies prioritize positive liberty, the freedom to do things. Freedom to have healthcare, freedom to have a vacation, freedom to be educated. These require a collective effort and taxes. To an American, a mandatory government ID card can feel like tyranny. To a German, it's just efficient paperwork. This brings us to the tragedy of the commons on steroids. We struggle with collective problems because we view collective solutions as infringements on personal liberty. Mask mandates, gun control, zoning laws, high-speed rail. To an outsider, these are logistical issues. To an American, they are philosophical battles about the soul of freedom. Let's look at the stats. The US has the highest rate of single-person households in its history, nearly 29%. We are more atomized than ever. This creates the loneliness epidemic. The US Surgeon General actually released an advisory on our epidemic of loneliness and isolation, stating it has the same mortality risk as smoking 15 cigarettes a day. We have built a society designed for the individual, suburbs where you need a car to get anywhere, fences around every yard, air conditioning that keeps us inside. We have traded community for privacy. The steel man. This hyper-individualism is the source of American creativity and civil rights. If you prioritize the group over the individual, you get conformity. You don't get the Jazz Age, the punk movement, or the civil rights movement, which was individuals standing up against the collective tyranny of the majority. American individualism says, it doesn't matter who your father was, you can be whoever you want. That is a powerful, intoxicating drug. It attracts the rebels, the outcasts, and the geniuses of the world. But the dark side is brutal. When you fail in a collectivist society, the group catches you. When you fail in an individualist society, it is your fault. You didn't work hard enough. You didn't manifest it. We have privatized success, but we have also privatized failure. The takeaway: we are a nation of 330 million main characters. We all think we are the protagonist of the movie. This makes for an exciting, dynamic society, but a very lonely and chaotic one. We are free to succeed, but we're also free to drown. 6. The casino mentality. Innovation through instability. If you want to understand why the American economy feels like a roller coaster designed by a maniac, you have to understand our relationship with risk. In many developed nations, let's take Germany or Japan, stability is the goal. You save money in a low-yield bank account, you buy a house, maybe, and you retire. Boring. Safe. In America, stability is for suckers. We want growth. This is the casino mentality. Here is a staggering stat. Roughly 61% of Americans own stock. In Germany, that number is around 18%. In the UK, it's about 23%. For most of the world, the stock market is a place for rich people to gamble. For Americans, the stock market is our retirement plan, our savings account, and our national scoreboard. This psychological addiction to number go up creates a unique economic engine, the wealth effect. When the S&P 500 hits a new high, Americans feel richer, even if they haven't sold a single share. Because we feel richer, we spend more money. Remember Section 2. This boosts corporate profits, which makes the stock market go up even more. It is a self-fulfilling prophecy until it isn't. This is why the US is the birthplace of the bubble, the dot-com bubble, the 2008 housing bubble, the everything bubble. We are culturally wired to chase the next big thing. The mechanics. This risk appetite is fueled by the US dollar's reserve status. Because the world trusts the dollar and needs it to buy oil, the US can print money to bail out its risk takers when the casino catches fire. In 2008, and again in 2020, the Federal Reserve printed trillions to keep the party going. If Turkey or Argentina did that, their currency would collapse, and it has. But because it's the USA, the world just shrugs and buys more treasury bonds. This financial recklessness is the primary reason the US leads the world in technology and innovation. You don't get Amazon, Google, or OpenAI by playing it safe. You get them by throwing billions of dollars at crazy ideas that might fail. Venture capital is basically institutionalized gambling. VCs expect 9 out of 10 companies to fail, but that 10th one, that's Uber, that's Facebook. This high-risk, high-reward psychology attracts the world's most ambitious people. If you have a crazy idea, you don't move to Zurich, you move to San Francisco. But here is the dark side. It creates extreme inequality. The top 10% of Americans own about 93% of the stock market wealth. So when the market booms, the rich get exponentially richer, while the average worker's wages stay relatively flat. It also creates a society that is terrified of a downturn. We have built a system that cannot tolerate a recession without existential panic. We are like a shark. If we stop swimming forward, growing, we die. The takeaway: the US economy is not a fortress. It is a high-speed train on a track that is being built while the train is moving. It is terrifying, exhilarating, and the envy of the world until it derails. 7. The punitive instinct. Freedom requires punishment. Now we have to address the elephant in the room, the gun-toting, incarcerated elephant. The United States is the land of the free. Yet ironically, we have the highest incarceration rate of any major democracy. Here are the hard numbers. The US has roughly 4.2% of the world's population, but we hold about 20% of the world's prisoners. Why? Is it because Americans are naturally more criminal? Data suggests, not really. Crime rates in the US fluctuate, but they aren't drastically different from other Western nations in many categories, except for lethal violence. The difference is psychological. It's about how we view justice. In places like Norway or the Netherlands, the justice system is based on rehabilitation. The logic is, this person is broken, let's fix them so they can be a taxpayer again. In the US, the justice system is based on retribution. The logic is, this person did something bad, they must suffer. This goes back to that Puritan sinner in the hands of an angry god software. If you commit a crime, you have violated the social contract of the individual, Section 5, and therefore you have forfeited your right to freedom. And then there are the guns. There are roughly 120.5 firearms for every 100 residents in the US. We are the only country in the world with more civilian-owned guns than people. To a European, this looks like madness. To an American psychologist, it looks like distrust. Remember the moat mentality, Section 4? We feel safe from external invasion, but we are terrified of internal threats. We don't trust the government to protect us, because we view the government as incompetent or tyrannical, so we outsource our security to ourselves. The argument for this punitive/armed culture is deterrence. The logic goes, an armed society is a polite society. If everyone has a gun, criminals will think twice. If prison is hell on earth, people won't. Commit crimes. And historically, during the massive crime waves of the 1970s and 80s, where New York City looked like a scene from The Warriors, this tough-on-crime approach was overwhelmingly popular with voters, including many in minority communities who were suffering the most from violence. It wasn't just imposed from above, it was demanded from below. But the dark side is the cycle of recidivism. Because US prisons are brutal and focused on punishment rather than job training or therapy, people come out worse than they went in. They can't get jobs because of the criminal record, so they go back to crime. We spend $80 billion a year on corrections, and our return on investment is more crime. The takeaway. The psychology here is a tragic paradox. We love freedom so much that we are willing to take it away from millions of people to prove a point. We're a nation of law and order, but we are often more obsessed with the order than the law. 8. The binary brain. Politics as a blood sport. We have arrived at the most visible symptom of the American psyche today, the Great Divide. If you turn on the news, you might think the US is on the brink of Civil War 2.0. We're told that the other side is not just wrong, but evil. They aren't just opponents, they are existential threats to the Republic. This is effective polarization. Political scientists use this term to describe when you hate the opposing party more than you actually like your own party. And guess what? The US is the world champion at this. A study by the National Bureau of Economic Research found that polarization in the US has increased faster than in any other major democracy since 1980. Why? Because of the binary choice. Most democracies have parliaments with 5, 6, or 7 parties. If you're a conservative who loves the environment, there's a party for you. If you're a socialist who loves guns, there's a party for you. In the US, you have 2 choices, Coke or Pepsi, red or blue. This binary system hacks our tribal psychology. It forces identity consolidation. If you pick Team Red, you're expected to buy the whole bundle: low taxes, gun rights, religious conservatism, and climate skepticism. If you pick Team Blue, you have to buy their bundle: higher taxes, gun control, secularism, and climate action. There is no a la carte menu in American politics. You eat the set menu or you starve. This triggers the us versus them mechanism deep in the amygdala, the fear center of the brain. When we see politics as a binary struggle for survival, we stop compromising. Compromise looks like weakness. It looks like betrayal. The mechanics. This is amplified by the primary system and gerrymandering. Because most districts are drawn to be safe for one party, thanks to politicians picking their voters, the only election that matters is the primary. And who votes in primaries? The most extreme, motivated and angry 10% of the base. So, to keep your job, you have to be as extreme as possible. If you try to be a moderate, you get primaried, fired, by your own team for being a rhino, Republican in name only, or a corporate dem. This intense competition clarifies the stakes. In a consensus-based system, like Germany under Merkel, nothing changes for 16 years. It's stable, but it can be stagnant. The American system ensures that when change happens, it happens hard. It allows for clear choices. We don't have messy coalition governments where nobody knows who is in charge. In the US, you know exactly who to blame. Furthermore, this gladiator match drives engagement. Turnout in the 2020 election was the highest in 120 years. Americans care. They're loud, messy, and angry, but they are participating. The reality filter breaks. We now have epistemic closure. We live in different information universes. A red voter watches Fox News and sees a country overrun by crime and immigrants. A blue voter watches MSNBC and sees a country overrun by fascists and racists. We aren't just disagreeing on policy, we're disagreeing on reality. When you can't agree on basic facts like who won the election or do vaccines work, you can't govern, you just scream. The takeaway. The US has turned politics into a religion because actual religion is fading. We treat the ballot box like a confessional and the opposing voter like a heretic. It makes for great cable news ratings, but it makes for a terrible Thanksgiving dinner. 9. The export of the ego. Cultural imperialism as a service. Finally, we have to talk about the American superpower that doesn't involve aircraft carriers. Cool. The United States is the only country in history that has successfully colonized the global subconscious. This is soft power. You might hate American foreign policy. You might think our healthcare system is a dystopian nightmare. You might think our politicians are clowns. But I bet you watch our movies. I bet you listen to our music. I bet you're watching this video on an American platform, YouTube, using an American operating system, iOS, Android, Windows, on the American-invented internet. The psychology of the USA is infectious. We export our neuroses. when America started obsessing over woke culture versus anti-woke culture, suddenly France and the UK started having the exact same arguments, using American terminology. We export our holidays. Halloween is now a thing in Japan. Black Friday is a thing in the UK, where they don't even celebrate Thanksgiving. Why is American culture so sticky? Because it is built on the universal hero's journey. Remember Section 5, individualism, and Section 3, optimism? American stories are almost always about the underdog. Rocky, Star Wars, Lucas was American, The Avengers, Hamilton. It is always one individual standing up against a system, against the odds, and winning. This is a universally appealing drug. It tells people in rigid, hierarchical societies, hey, you matter, you can change your destiny. That is a dangerous, revolutionary idea, and we broadcast it 24/7. The mechanics, the sheer scale of the US media machine, Hollywood, Silicon Valley, and Madison Avenue advertising, form a triad of psychological influence. They don't just sell products, they sell desire. They sell the idea that if you drink this soda, wear these jeans, and listen to this rap song, you are part of the future. You are part of the Freedom Club. This cultural dominance has likely prevented World War III. It's called the Golden Arches theory of conflict prevention, popularized by Thomas Friedman. The idea was that no two countries that both had McDonald's would ever go to war because their economies and cultures were too integrated. Note, this theory has taken some hits recently with Russia/Ukraine, but the core logic holds some weight. American culture creates a shared language. A kid in Seoul and a kid in Berlin can bond over a Marvel movie or a Taylor Swift song. That reduces the alien factor of other nations. The dark side, it flattens the world. Sociologists call this McWorld. Unique cultural traditions are being bulldozed by a homogenized, Americanized consumer culture. We are replacing deep, centuries-old traditions with fast food and fast fashion. We are teaching the world to be anxious, consumerist, individualistic workaholics, just like us. The takeaway: America's greatest export isn't oil or weapons, it is its psychology. We are programming the world to think like Americans. Whether that is a liberation or a virus depends on who you ask. 10. Final thoughts, the prognosis. So, here we are. We've put the patient on the couch. What is the diagnosis? The United States is not just a country. It is a psychological experiment run on a continental scale. We are a nation built on contradictions. We are obsessed with freedom, but we are enslaved by our ambition. We are the most individualistic people on Earth, yet we are desperate for belonging. We feel invincible behind our oceans, yet we are terrified of each other. We are optimistic gamblers who believe we will all be millionaires, even as the math says otherwise. If the USA were a person, they would be brilliant, manic, loud, generous, violent, and incredibly exhausting to be around. But here is the thing about this specific mental illness. It works. Well, it works for growth. It works for innovation. It works for change. The American psychology is not designed for stability. It is designed for velocity. We are an engine that runs hot. Sometimes we overheat. Sometimes we explode. But we never, ever stop moving. The question for the 21st century isn't, will America collapse? The question is, can America learn to chill out? Can we keep the drive that gave us the moon landing and the internet, without keeping the anxiety that gives us the opioid crisis and political polarization? Can we learn to take a vacation without feeling guilty? Current trends suggest, probably not. The dopamine hit is too strong, the casino is always open, and the grind never stops. But hey, at least the TV shows are good. Thank you for coming to this therapy session. If you enjoyed this deep dive into the national psyche, do me a favor. We are slaves to the algorithm, the ultimate American invention, so please hit that like button. It validates my existence in a measurable economic way. Comment below, which of these psychological pillars do you feel the most in your daily life? Is it the grind, the consumerism, or are you just here for the tribal politics? Let's fight about it in the comments. And if you want to understand the psychology of America's neighbour, Canada, watch out for our upcoming video on the topic. Thanks for watching. Go take a nap. You've earned it. I'll see you in the next one.